So today's lesson, this is lesson number 3 of the Shin Chess Advantage classes. And we have been doing it every Sunday at 1 p.m. For the last 3 weeks. And I'm excited to keep going with it all the way through the end of April and maybe longer. I don't know. What is checkmate? A checkmate is a check from which the king cannot escape. So and what that means is that the king cannot capture the piece that's attacking it, right? Because it's defended, probably. It can't move away, so it can't sidestep the attack of the check. And lastly, it cannot. There's no piece that can block the check. That's so checkmate is not the only way, but it is definitely at the lower level. It's going to happen every game. So I want to talk about when to actually go for checkmate and also when to not go for checkmate. So first, when to go for checkmate, right? So the first time is when all your pieces, right? So your bishops, your knights, your rooks, even your pawns, and of course your queen are developed and coordinated. So what I mean by that is developed in that they are active, right? So they're all not in the back rank. They're coming together, and usually they're combining to attack certain squares together, and they're also coordinated in that they are kind of moving as a unit and going to put a lot of pressure on the enemy king and the enemy other pieces, preventing your opponent's pieces from being able to defend their own king. So the second point is you have to have a solid control of the center, right? So in the last 2 lessons, we talked a lot about controlling the center. We had we talked about Bobby Fischer and how he always controlled the center and then he attacked his opponent's king, right? He played Gligorich in that Roy Lopez attack and just had great control of the center and then was able to bring his knight and his queen and rook together to attack the black king, right? So again, let's review when to not go for checkmate, right? And those times are when we only have maybe 1 or maybe 2 attacking pieces. Usually that's not enough to make an opening and put the other king in danger. Another time that people don't really think about is our control in the center is not strong enough. So when we lose control of the center and we're going for checkmate, it's very, very easy actually for your opponent to bring their pieces through the center sort of and then defend themselves and also be taking probably taking some of your pieces that we're trying to attack. So when you don't have the center, it's very hard to attack. And when our king is in danger, right? So that sometimes you have to just be like, okay, well, I can't go for checkmate. I think I'm going to get checkmated first if I go for that attack. So let me instead try a different strategy, like in the like I put below, is that you can always try to win what you call material, right? So that's like winning a pawn, winning a piece, or so that means a bishop or a knight or a rook or queen. So when you can win the quote unquote material advantage, right? You're gaining points. That is another way of winning. So you can take their pieces and then start trading those pieces that are of equal value. So let's say I win a rook, right? And I know that if I trade all of my pieces, my bishop for his bishop, my queen for his queen, right? Eventually, when you take off all the pieces, it's going to be a lot easier to win with that rook, right? That we saved. So, and then you can win in what you call the end game, which is essentially when there's no queens on the board and there's limited pieces remaining, and it becomes much easier for a piece like a rook or a bishop to just take all of your opponent's pawns and then make queens. So that's what we're gonna talk about today, checkmate. So let's warm our brains up before the lesson. We're gonna go through 3 puzzles today, and they're all for getting checkmate. So it's gonna be a good warm up for people. Please type me the notation for checkmate in 1. for white. This queen is going to go from d3, right? But we don't need to say that in the notation. It's going to go from d3 to this square d8, right? And then this hashtag or phone number dialing sign that you see in the chat symbolizes checkmate. So you don't need to have any dashes when you write. It's just the queen to d8, right? And why can't that king capture it, right? The king is unable to capture because the rook is defending this queen on this battery situation, right? So they've doubled up, and in combination, they're going to go to d8, and that is checkmate because this knight is blocking this rook from being helpful and protecting that square, right? So, yep, queen to d8, checkmate in 1. So let's do a couple more, right? Okay, this one is also checkmate in 1. Look carefully, look closely. Don't make your move too fast. Don't type it too fast. Just think about it for a second. Okay, cool. Okay, great. So we got a range of answers, right? Before we talk about the actual winning move, can people tell me why you can't just do the same thing with the queen? Basically, why can't we put this queen and capture a7, right? Why can't we just because the knight is defending it, right? So shouldn't that be checkmate? Right. So as people are typing in, thank you, Jeremiah. This queen on e3, right? The black queen is actually, it can go all the way on this long diagonal, right? And actually it protects the pawn on a7, right? So the queen would not be able to capture because there is 1, 2 defenders on this pawn, and there's only 1, 2 attackers. So when there's an equal amount of attackers and defenders, that means it's going to cancel out. So this it's not a good situation for white. So yes, Stephen, thank you very much for telling us what this type of checkmate is. This is called what we call in chess a smother mate, and we call it a smother mate because this knight is going to hop into c7, right? So it's going to go 1, 2, and 1 over, and it's going to the king cannot move because it is smothered by its own pieces, right? It can't go anywhere, and so when the knight checks it, right, on c7, that is checkmate. Can't run, can't capture, and cannot block a knight, right? A knight has the unique ability to hop over pieces. So knight to c7 is correct. Thank you for everyone who typed it in. So this one is checkmate in 2 for white. This one is going to be a lot trickier, so I want to give more time for it. It's checkmate in 2, and notice that we are down a queen right now, right? We just lost our queen, so you don't want to take too much time. You should definitely be checking the black king before, so that we can save time, right? Or else he's just going to start trading all his pieces and we're going to lose. So think about it. Great. Okay, so we got 2 correct answers. That's awesome. Definitely feel free to guess next time, even if you don't know it. That's totally okay to be wrong. So the first move that white is going to play to force black into capturing and not being able to move, right? So you see this pawn on f7, the Freddy pawn, right? He is very undefended. And also, if we were somehow able to get our bishop on b3 to capture that pawn, right, then our knight could combine it and protect it, right? And the king would be unable to move because it's blocked by its own pieces, and it would not be able to go to d7 because of this knight, right? So if only we could get rid of our own knight on d5, right? And then we would be able to checkmate them, right? So if you took this knight on d5 away, we would have checkmate in 1. But unfortunately, we don't. So we have to figure out a way to move this piece, right, without losing any time. Otherwise, this knight or this bishop is going to capture our scary bishop on b3, or this pawn on d5 will capture our knight. So, Takeo, you were almost there. That was close. You said knight takes c7. That is the correct idea. But actually, what happens if you take that pawn is the black queen will recapture, and the king will actually have a square on d8 to run to, and we no longer have checkmate. So what Stephen and Jeremiah were saying is correct. In order to keep the king where it is and keep the queen and bishop stuck there and knight as well, this knight on d5 is going to hop over to f6, right, and check the king. And there's nowhere for the king to run, so the only move in response is for the g pawn. G takes f6, right? G, the pawn is just, there's no, you don't have to type p, so it's just g takes f6, the g pawn, and then this bishop will be able to hop in and capture f7 for checkmate. So I can't actually drag the pieces because it's just an image, but just try to visualize that. So like the knight hopping over here, the pawn capturing, and it has to, right? And then this knight and bishop will combine to capture this and checkmate the black king, okay? So those were our 3 puzzles for the day. If you can get 2 puzzles correctly out of 3, that's really good. If you get all 3, you're doing excellent. So I'm gonna show puzzles for all skill levels. So like easy checkmates in 1 or simple tactics, but I'm also gonna show these more complex puzzles so that the more advanced students can learn as well. So, okay. Now I think we're ready. Our brains are all warmed up, and now we're going to be able to jump into a game and kind of think about how these tactics that we just learned, right? We have all these queen and knight combinations, right? And think about how that can apply or be very similar to in situation to the game we're going to analyze today.